Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Breezeway Productions, The Breeze. And we are happy to cover the 2020 Cucalorus Film Festival as we continue our online interview segments with filmmakers from around the world talking about their films that are official selections towards their respective festivals. So today we are joined by a wonderful guest, Megan Daniels, director of Proper Pronouns. How are you, Megan?
I'm well. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. Excited to talk with the filmmakers of this year's festival and tell us a little about your film Proper Pronouns that was selected for Cucalorus this year.
Proper Pronouns is a feature film that is a journey, a chronicle of four transgender ministers trying to practice and prove to the community that they belong in the pulpit. All of them transitioned over the age of 50. Two of them had partners before their transition, and the partners decided to stay with them, which is a secondary theme of the film, is what it is like for the partners who kind of get lost in the shuffle as far as their identity goes. So not only are they working through their own identity in their transition process, they now are throwing their partners into somewhat of a crisis for what it means to, to be and who they have to be as a spouse should they decide to stay together.
Wow, that's quite a heavy topic to dive into. The first thing that came to mind when you talked about it was about transgenders in the ministry and that identity. So how does the ministry feel about the identity of the transgender orientation?
Down here, not so great. Being that they're in North Carolina, in locations like Gastonia, which is close to the border of South Carolina, there's still Confederate flags being waved all over the state. And then you get into South Carolina, and I don't even want to touch that one. But what's nice is the Methodist Church is starting to organize, and partly people are breaking away from the Methodist Church because they do have beliefs, and a lot of people in the Methodist Church do support the LGBTQ community being in the pulpit. So what's kind of promising is that people are going to kind of form their own church, but still stay rooted with the Methodist belief system. However, they are starting to embrace the LGBTQ community in the pulpit.
Sure.
So
well, that is a very tough situation for them to be in right now, because they are looking towards their faith as something that they can confide in, yet it feels like all the odds are against them from people that don't understand them, or they feel like they don't fit in, or it's not right, or what have you, especially when this is taking place in the South. What drew this subject matter to you, and why did you want to make a documentary about it, or a film about it? I apologize.
I grew up in upstate New York, and I had a family that from day one, we embraced the the LGBTQ community. The trans community was not as prominent at that time as far as recognition goes as part of the LGBTQ community. But my family, everybody loved one another, regardless of how they identified, sexual orientation, skin color, any of that. We were not allowed as children to see people as different just because of those reasons, how they conform. Society puts people in silos because it makes people more comfortable if there are titles. And, my parents didn't believe that, but I was raised Catholic too. So there was this real struggle for me as far as sitting in church on Sundays, love thy neighbor, and then, confessing on Sundays about you know, who my friends were, if they were lesbian or my family members, and then saying Hail Marys. And it's like, what? So my family, even though there was, you know, a deep root in Catholicism, they still did not believe in parts of what Catholicism embraces, which means, LGBTQ community, not so much.
It's
Okay,
true.
but love thy neighbor, right?
Practice what you preach is supposed to be what it is, but it not. But there's an asterisk for an exception. I don't know. Yeah,
Right,
I
right.
understand what you're
So
saying.
that left me with a lot of confusion
Yeah.
growing up. I left Catholicism. I'm an atheist now. Um, so I really wanted to see, when I came to the South, why scripture prevailed over love. So yes, of course, I have, you know, family and friends who came out to their families as Catholics. There was turmoil, there were periods of not talking to one another, but in the end, love prevailed. They never, ever, ever stopped loving their children, nor did they kick them out of the house, exonerate them, etc. Well, I moved here and that was not the case. Scripture prevailed and it blew my mind. So I had to do a self-reflexive film, not only for me to figure out what it means to love thy neighbor down here, but still follow scripture and kick your children out of the house.
Yeah. Well,
So
may
I
love
had,
always prevail, which is what we hope. And I'm curious to know, what do you want your audiences to take away from the film after they've seen Proper Pronouns or get a chance to check it out?
I want them to understand that everyone is human, and they probably don't even realize they've sat next to a trans person and they had a conversation with them and they enjoyed the conversation. So I want people to understand that we need to embrace scripture in a way that makes sense when it's about inclusion and not exclusion. So for me, religion, when it becomes exclusion instead of inclusion, it's no longer religion. And I think that people need to understand that we cannot tolerate acts of violence towards people of color, towards the LGBTQ community, because they're human beings. I want people to walk away questioning their definition of humanity if they sat through the film, walking a fine line of what it means to be trans and what it means to go through that, when they still, regardless of body parts and who they love, are still human beings.
Well said. Very well said. In closing, is there anything that you'd like to say to the Cucalorus Film Festival for your admission into this year's festival?
Oh, they've been so wonderful. Back in 2017, we got an NC filmmaker grant from them for this project.
Nice.
They have been so supported over the years, and I was honored. We were honored, my co-producer and co-editor, we were honored to be featured in this film. And we hope to continue to have a relationship with them. All the people are great, and I've gotten to be friends with a lot of them. They put on a fabulous festival in a really during a crisis, and they still made it a wonderful experience.
Well, I'm glad that you are having a great time at this festival, and I thank you for coming to speak with me today about your film, Proper Pronouns. Again, director Megan Daniels here as an official selection of the Cucalorus Film Festival, and we hope that you can check out the film. And again, thank you, Megan, for speaking with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.